your last video, the one on Heat, that was brilliant, man. It was really, really good.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, it's one of those movies took me by surprise, when I watched it again. So after all these years, when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, this is cool. This is a great crime thriller. I want to be like these guys. Now I watch it now, and I look at it back and I say, you know what? In a lot of ways, I am. And you look back and you think, okay, I recognize those relationships and those dynamics. I recognize that mindset. I recognize where they are now, which I couldn't see back then, and I can see and appreciate, their mindset and how they view things. And yeah, so it got to that point. It's that point in life. You reach that point in life and you've lived it, and you say, okay, I recognize that familiar pattern. Okay.
Yeah, after watching your video, I want to watch it again. I might actually watch it tonight, because when I watched it, I remember, this is just a fantastic movie. This is really good. It was intimate. I didn't realize that at the time. It's just a very quiet, still movie, but it was so rich. But I remember I watched it a dozen times back in the day, but as you said, like now, past midlife, after listening to all you speaking, I was looking at the characters and I'm thinking, fuck, I'm like Al Pacino's character. No wonder I can't sustain any relationships. I just remember the scenes where he'd go home, when he sort of say, I'm sorry, your chicken's fucking cold. And he had no interest in being there. She wanted to go out. She was putting on lipstick, and he's just sitting there thinking about the job. And I just remember myself in my last relationship, like I'm hanging around my ex, and I'm just I've got my notebook and I'm writing these thoughts down for the next video, and I'm writing in my notebook. And when we go out to coffee shops, she'd be like talking to sort of people and be real gregarious. And I had my head down in my notebook and I'd be writing.
That was like me with the Macaulay character, the De Niro character. It's like I remember bringing a girl back to my place, and she looks around and she goes, "Do you live here?" It's just a fucking bear. There's nothing there. It's like, I don't need anything. What do you want? There's nothing on the walls. There's nothing. What, you live here?
Yeah, I've been in my place for about 20 years now, and I only put up my first picture frame 2 years ago. It's just all white walls. Everything's very austere. I've got my couch. Everything's very functional. Aside from my studio, where I've just cluttered it full of all my sort of bits and pieces that I tinker with, the rest of my house is very functional.
And if you showed that video, the one I did on hate, if you showed that to a woman, you'd see how absolutely different their perspective. No woman could grasp what I said in that video. They wouldn't be able to grasp it, literally. The mentality and those needs and desires that these characters have and what they're wrestling with, no woman would be able to grasp what those men are wrestling with. It would be completely alien to them.
No, absolutely. I think I mentioned it in an older video. I think I've talked to you or Stardust about it, where a good test. No, actually, I talked to Quasimandias about it. Is I started to realize in midlife with women that, especially proper relationships, you'd watch movies and you'd see the difference in morals and ethics and what they'd see as important and what they wouldn't, and what would just be invisible. A real poignant moment, like this was 7 years ago. I was with one of those girls that I'd avoid now. You talked about those girls with tattoos. She was a real rough chick that liked being choked, and she had her own problems, childhood problems. But I remember we watched that movie, Her. Have you seen that?
Only bits of it. I know Baba talked about it. I've only seen a little bit.
Yeah, I watched that and I was blown away. And it was a very intimate movie set in the future about how relationships would happen. And the central character, Joaquin Phoenix, was basically a really lonely guy, and the world basically communicated via the internet and their phones. Like everyone, you see them walking in the streets, they got their heads down, no one talks to each other. And then you'd see him, he'd come home from his job in a cubicle, and at night he'd just log in and try and talk to people and try and date online, and everything wasn't working. And he finally gets this the new Windows that's popular, that's an AI, and the Windows actually speaks to you, and you can pick a voice, and he picks a female voice. He starts to have a relationship with it. And it's actually really poignant, where it shows he has a really deep relationship with this AI that then he can carry around in his pocket when he goes out to the beach and he's talking to his operating system. And then he finds out later on that she's having a relationship with millions and millions of other men around the world.
Well, suppose she would be, wouldn't she?
But
Yeah.
but it was really really I found it really touching. It was just a really it was similar to sort of the things you realised in Heat, but this was a lot more intimate. And I remember after the movie, I turned to her and I said, like, fuck, that movie was brilliant. And she went quiet and looked at me and she said, I fucking hated it. It was the worst movie I've seen in my life. What a fucking loser. And I kind of paused and I thought, fucking hell. And then it's only in retrospect later on that I realized, like, her heartlessness, the way we broke up and her anger issues and all that sort of stuff. She was just a cold piece of work. And those movie tests, not that you need to test them, but if you're a man, especially with Manosphere knowledge and the things you're aware of now, that you can read between the lines and you don't just gloss over those things when and one of the questions here is male intuition, but like your intuition tells you something where a girl's on a very different page to you and it surprises you. You learn not to overlook it because it's an important connection to you and her in terms of intimacy. Like when that pops up, it's like your trust, like I can't fucking trust this person because this really stands out as something that's really not connected to my values.
Yeah.
But yeah, Heat definitely, that's a very, very masculine movie though.
It's like I said, it would never be made today. It wouldn't. It touched on too many things in regards to male experience, and both characters were so strong and so solid. You just wouldn't get that.
And one thing I'd postulate as well is if the women, the only way they'd actually relate to that movie is it's only when a woman would be in the picture. So when Macaulay sort of goes into the hotel room and confronts his friend's wife having an affair in that hotel room, maybe that kind of hybristophilia, kind of like the violence aspect of a really alpha guy that might titillate a woman. They might respect his status and his confidence, but they will not get the underlying subtext of meaning, like, especially the isolation, the loneliness, what a person goes through. Yeah. But it's funny. They're so self-referential. I mean, I've watched movies and I've listened to I've read women, female authors, but when they touch on the human experience, I can actually nod my head and say, yeah, that's right. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a man telling me. But with a woman, especially, that you have to be very literal, even visually. It has to be a woman telling them meaning. A man cannot tell them meaning.
No. You go round and round with women. It's like being on a hamster wheel. It's the most basic, simple concepts. It's very hard to reach a woman in that regard from a male perspective. They block it out.
All right, let's get on to the questions. We could talk forever.
Alrighty.
Okay. I lack internal motivation. What motivates you in the morning?
It will vary from individual to individual. I mean, there's different motivations for different people, and it's going to be different motivations at different stages in life. So, I mean, it could be what motivates you. Money. Money motivates me. It could be success. It could be you have a passion for something specific. You could be seeking recognition. It depends on the individual at that point in their life, where things are going to be of, more or less importance. But you've got to analyze underneath the surface as well. What, if you want money, you don't want money. You want what money brings you. People, I guess, they get to a certain point in life where they're comfortable and they go on autopilot. And that's like we're talking about technology with her and all the rest of it, like that movie. That keeps creeping into our daily lives. So people just get sucked into this vacuum. So the more technology creeps in, the more we get sucked into this comfort vacuum. So, and then they look for ways to release that. Okay, I'm going to buy something online, but it's just because of the pleasure of making the purchase. But you've been there, you've done that. Something arrives on your doorstep. You say, what the fuck is this? When did I buy this? I have no recognition of it. But it's giving you that sense of autonomy in the moment. But a lot of people get stuck in this cycle where they don't want to go outside and take a risk. So it's that pain of potential rejection from going out there or asking or taking a risk, if that makes sense. But I mean, what motivates me is I have a lot of structure in my life. I turn my phone on at 8 a.m. in the morning because I don't check emails and I don't do text messages. So I've got all these people from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. They know they can reach me. I've got different businesses that I've set up with different tradesmen. So I've got all these different channels. Then I've got all these community groups that I'm part of. So people are hitting me up for different reasons. Could be funding, could be organizing something. It could be work related. It could be about handling a situation, whatever it is. So my motivation is from all of that action, from all those different channels that I get. So for me, it's about helping other people. But my interests and my passions are just spread out all over the place. It's not just one thing. So that motivates me.
Yeah, I think it plays back into, sometimes it seems like a glib answer when they say, find something to do, get a hobby, what are you interested in? And it's almost insulting for a man who's going through that particular point in terms of like stress, maybe after, a big trauma in life, ex-wife, children, all that kind of business, alimony, whatever, and being alone especially. When someone just says, sometimes it can come off as insulting as just go to the gym, bro. It doesn't really give you much to hold on to. I suppose with this question is what motivates you in the morning. It's asking for a very quick answer in the morning. Like when I wake up, I don't want the existential dread of, oh, fuck, another day. What do I do? Or another day. So what in the morning can alleviate that? So just in a very short way, I know for me, I like to go to bed and I write a couple of bullet points. It could be 2 or 3 on my kitchen bench. I've got a notepad. And it could be as simple as groceries. This is for the next day. Groceries, mow the lawn, write down some ideas for a new video, whatever it might be. It could be just really, really simple. They don't need to be big life-changing things. This is the other thing. People put so much pressure on themselves to have these big, meaningful things as motivational, aspects of their life. It's like, simplify, man. Like, why do you need to be Elon Musk? Like, relax. Like, just jot down what you'd like to do tomorrow. Because all you want is that little sort of buzz. You mentioned before about the package on eBay. Like I noticed with myself when I used to sort of work full-time in the city and I'd come home and there'd be a nice little package waiting on my doorstep and it'd feel really good. It was a little buzz for the day that would otherwise might be grey and boring. And you have to ask yourself, why did that make my day? That little innocuous package. And then I go online and I buy another little trinket to look forward to. What's the purpose of me buying those little things and looking forward to them coming in the mail tomorrow? Yeah. Like, couldn't I transpose things I wanted to do, little goals for myself over the next month that could take the place of that package coming in from eBay? These are some of the hard questions because it's really easy to say, like, I'll just buy something online, click done. Oh, great. That's something to wake up to. Or I'll go online and I'll put up a dating profile and there's something else that'll be on my doorstep as well, something else to look forward to. But if you strip that away and go, okay, there's nothing but myself to wake up to in the morning, that's really confronting. I think that's the most honest thing you can do.
So I got involved with a lot of veterans over the years and I'm very passionate about it. I'm passionate about what they go through because at one point in my life, I was acting up, I was acting out and all the rest of it. And I had this veteran, he came to me and he was like, come with me. He said, come to these groups. I want to introduce you to some people. And I went there and I said, look, I've never served. I've never been in the military. You see me, I'm a fucking mess. He said, no, just listen to these guys. So I'd go in there and I'd see how they'd break things down systematically. These are guys that, now that they've come out of the military, they feel really isolated. They feel completely alone. They feel cut off. They feel forgotten. They've lost all that brotherhood, that sense of purpose, and there's a lot of anger there, a lot of resentment. And so they get really isolated because they just pull into themselves because they think, well, no one's going to understand me anyway. So they reach for the bottle or they get addicted or, they end up getting desperate. And that's just a pattern that keeps playing out all the time. And they ascribe purpose to the job that they have currently, the stacking shelves or the delivering something in a van. This is no. Look, it's a job. A job is a stepping stone to a career or to a vocation. You're taking steps towards that goal to find your purpose. And what they said, stop putting all this pressure on yourself. This is what men do. He said, what the purpose is. He says, it's not as important as having a purpose. He says, as long as you have a purpose, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be surfing. It could be fishing. It could be doing this in the community. It could be that. Have a purpose. He said, then you've got a reason to get up in the morning. Then you've got structure. Then from there, you just keep building and building relationships. And from there you go. And it was just those little steps for guys that have gone through a lot of trauma, you know?
But I think it's sort of harks to sort of men putting too much on their shoulders in terms of responsibility for everyone and everything outside them, that they even ascribe that to words like purpose. It's kind of, it's got to be big. It's got to be worldly. It's like, no, purpose could be waking up and just making a video. Purpose could be going up and going for a walk. Replace purpose with something that kind of is less pressure, like I like to do. That's it, you know? That's purpose. But I think men put a lot of big pressure on themselves. And it's a way of avoiding the small things that could incrementally help your life. Because if you go, it's the same way that people don't, you know, I've mentioned before, you won't write a book until you've got the perfect pencil, or, you know, I won't get into shape until I've bought the perfect equipment. I can't do this yet. I need to get A, B, and C, my ducks in a row. So it's the same with this philosophically. They'll go, oh, well, and the guys that conveniently enough, like with these questions we're answering, like I'm pretty sure you and I aren't interested in big world building political questions. We're more interested in like the personal. And so a lot of guys will extend, you know, what's my purpose, this big thing, this massive umbrella. So it's a great way of avoiding yourself, because what you are is simple. You are the guy that gets up and likes cornflakes. You got your stuff that you're into. I've got my stuff. That's your purpose. Do more of that.
Yeah, I mean, and reframing the question as well, which is what I've done with guys before. Guys are sitting there go, well, what's my life purpose? What should I do with my life? Well, what you're really asking is, what can I do with my time that is important to me? So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, they feel like they have no sense of direction, no purpose in life. It's because they don't know what's important to them. When you don't know what's important to you, then you're taking on other people's priorities instead of your own. That's just a one-way ticket to being very unhealthy and, you know, to eventually misery.
That probably leads into another question that was asked. Is the black pill the fastest rising part of the manosphere? And if so, why? I've always felt like men feel like they've been discarded by the world. They want to feel useful, and their old usefulness isn't needed by the world anymore. So it's easy to see why men without that will and purpose of the past get really nihilistic.
Yeah.
They might feel, they don't care about me, so I don't care about them. But they forget about caring about themselves.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, you remember back in the day, we had a lot of guys like Baba and stuff, and man, woman, myths, making like really great content, makes you think about things. But a lot of guys today, like I don't have much interaction online. I'm talking about guys in the everyday world. The guys men, including myself, I've done this, we'll dig a certain part of the way, but we'll stop. So that's as far as we need to go. That's fine. You know, that men today, they'd be great at laying foundations on building sites. They'd lay that concrete. That'd be great. They'd be perfect, absolutely pristine. But you go up to them and say, well, you know, where's the framing? Where's the roof? So what if it rains? So don't worry, I've got an umbrella. It's not quite the same, is it? You know what I mean? So they want nice, simple answers, simple memes, simple slogans that they can just adopt, and that's cool. That's all it is. That simplistic answers to very complex things, and so I don't have to dig any further. Because those larger questions, just like anybody in everyday life, is going to bring discomfort. Like you take a guy out of prison, the only way he's going to go straight is if he abandons the environment he was in. He's going to have to get rid of those networks. He's going to have to start anew. So he's abandoning comfort and all those simple answers. He's going to start having to look inside and ask some really hard answers, hard questions, make sense of things. And you look online, a lot of the stuff, just from what I've seen, maybe I'm wrong, but all this Redpill stuff, it's basically just turned into anger porn. And it's all over. It doesn't make sense. A lot of it's hypocritical. Okay, go out and sleep with a bunch of women. but any woman that does that's a slut. Buy my book and I'll give you keys to success, but they're not your friends. If it's not nutritious, discard it. Just excrete it. If you don't get anything of nutritional value out of the content, stop watching it. It's poison.
It's also like they're not asking themselves what they really want. There's a lot of contradictions. No. Like, women won't fuck me. So basically, like they want slutty women, but then they say, oh, women are too slutty. I wouldn't marry one.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, what do you want, man? Yeah. Pick a lane, and like don't try and straddle both.
Just because you asked about the black pill, sorry, I diverted, but the black pill, just from what I've seen, and me, I don't watch much content, but it seems to touch on a lot of truths. But it doesn't, just from what I've seen, it doesn't seem to touch on any of the wider implications, really, of what's going on. Now, what I've done over the past few months, because I really wanted to understand at a real, social level. So I've been talking to a lot of men, especially younger men, and I've been talking to a lot of women. And I've been sitting down with them and saying, like with the woman that I sat down with, I said, okay, walk me through the process, and the way I did it is the same way that I asked for business, help me. Okay, I'm potentially looking to meet up with a woman. Do you know anybody I can meet up with? And what would I need to do in 2020? Walk me through the steps. What would you do? How would you select a partner? And what I've seen is that all the social circles, it's still the same process, the vetting, the social proofing, all the rest of it. But the social networks have now moved online. So women are using apps, but it's really only for validation. And they're not typically engaging. They could have thousands of matches. How many of these guys do you meet up with? None. Okay, so show me the process of online. They go through different profiles, different sites, all the rest of it. It's an extreme vetting process going on with these men. The social proofing, all the rest of it, same process. But what it's doing is just excluding a large number of men. So I can see that things have changed substantially, especially over the last 1 or 2 years. With all this OnlyFans and all the rest of it, I can see that now. I was completely unaware of it before. And this is heading in a bad direction. I can see that. It's going to end up with a lot of violence and a lot of disenfranchisement. But what they're touching on is truthful. But there's a lot more to it, that's all. Yeah. And it's with men as well. It's what I've found out is like guys, of course, they always think that women, if a man is engaging in an activity, he thinks women are doing the same. Well, that's not true. Women are not using apps the same way that men use apps. Women are not selecting the same way that men select. So a lot of that, it's like 10 to 20% of users on those apps are female. So I mean, it's and they're burying you in the pile, whatever, however it works. They want you to pay money. So this is all new to me. I didn't know about any of this shit, but I can see it's a con, and we're going to see more and more of this through the next decade. We're already seeing it. Guys preying on men's loneliness. Men and women are going to try and market to this group. You'd understand how to market to it, but guys got to have their guards up. More and more now. And you're right. It's about setting boundaries and it's about being self-aware. It's the only way they're going to be able to protect themselves because there's going to be a lot of sharks out there.
Well, it says a lot when you think about not just say for yourself as a personality, someone who's sort of not very tech savvy and that doesn't feel like they need to be connected as much compared to the person that's completely connected. Generally, the anxiety level is with the latter, the kind of person that's really connected to the online space because it is so empty. It's sort of, it's all spectacle and no substance. Like you don't touch anything. There's no tactility to it. It's all potential. It's all tomorrow. It's all what's going to arrive on my doorstep. It's all tomorrow's love affair. It's all, no wonder guys wake up and say, how can I motivate myself in the morning? Because like they keep needing something to look forward to. They keep needing motivation because where they're living in this moment is continually nothing. All they've got is looking forward to tomorrow. And look, there's something to be said for that, but not continually living in that mental space.
Yeah. There was a question there about how would you, I think he was a drug counselor or a youth counselor. He was asking, how do you reach teenagers today? Well, I mean, I've dealt with some, but my approach is a bit different, of course. But I mean, I suppose you could take the, take a young black pill guy, and say, look, you could bring him into a session. You'd be like, okay, well, what are you interested in? Nothing. What do you do with your time? Nothing. What do you like? Nothing. You got any friends? No. Why not? Well, nobody likes me. I'm ugly. I'd be like, well, how do you know? How do people react to you? And it'd be like, well, this is what they say, blah, blah, blah. And I was, I've done this before. It's like, well, could you talk about something? If I asked you to talk about something for 10 minutes, anything, any topic, could you do it? No. Okay. And start digging a bit deeper. I've done this with young guys, and it's like you touch into something. Okay, you're telling me that people are reacting to you this way. What do you think that's about? And no doubt he'd break down the stats. He'd show me exactly how things work. These are the studies. Look, I could take out a protractor and I could put it to your skull, and I'm going to measure your skull, and that's going to determine your level of success in life. Yeah, your looks. That's it. That's all it is. That's it. Now, a lot of guys are saying this. Well, tell me about the guys saying this. Who else is saying this? What's their experience? And off he goes. Okay, 20, 30 minutes, he's going to be rambling. Okay, 2 minutes ago you said you couldn't talk about anything. I wouldn't bring it up to him. But now you've got engagement. Yeah, and people think that because genuine rapport comes from genuine engagement, but people got that back to front. It's how it works. But, I mean, you've got to come to that point where you can reach them and get on their level and just have that conversation and engage with them. Because in the back of his mind, he's going to be thinking, this guy's just going to tell me I'm either full of shit, or he's just going to tell me to man up, or he's just going to tell me, no, you're not bad looking. You're a good looking guy. Go out there. Go get some women. Go on. Go to a local disco. Go on. Think fucking hell. Guys out of touch. But I've done this with young men, and you reach them on that level. All you've done is listened and approach them with compassionate curiosity and, curiosity about how they think and what their experience is. The next session they come in, it's going to be like the weight of the world is lifted off their shoulders, and they're going to really engage with that, and they're going to enjoy being there. And that's how I reach men. You can't do that online, but I've seen the benefits of that. And it's not that I could sit there and say, look, I know that things have changed. Socially, things have changed in terms of technology, how we communicate. Yeah, I can tell. It's not the 1950s anymore. But, tell me about your experience. Let's talk about what you're excited about. And you could dig further from that, but it's about getting through that first barrier. They expect to get kicked in the teeth when they put their head up, and it does happen, but it's hard to permeate that.
Especially with a lot of those guys that can't speak or they have no interest in it. It's basically they don't have a voice. So it's no surprise when you look at some of the frustrations and problems they might have in their lives and unresolved issues and things like that. But if you can't actually speak, how are you communicating? Well, the only way I can communicate is physically, by either the job I do or punching some guy in the face. Yeah. And you usually tell when you start speaking to them a little bit, their lexicon's pretty shallow. They're like an empty shell walking around wanting to be filled up by women, jobs, fights, wanting stimuli. Now, look, I suppose people like you and I, we've got our own challenges where you're used to walking around in a world where they're not like you. The stuff that you and I think is important, and it's not like we think we're any better, but it's kind of like if people are sort of saying, well, you're pretty calm. You feel you're pretty well adjusted, and they almost kind of, they start talking to you, and I can tell sometimes it's a breath of fresh air to talk to someone that can talk about anything, is interested in just day-to-day life. And my opinions are my own. They're not just copies of what's on television and media. I don't just say what they expect me to say. And I found that the more I went on in life, I found the lack of it reciprocated in people, the actual lack of individuality in a person I'm speaking to, whether it's female or male friends. I can only go so far in the conversation and wanting to be around them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see it in everyday life. I see guys of all ages. They limit themselves. They limit themselves mentally, sexually, emotionally, physically, basically in every walk of life and every facet of their being, essentially. Men limit themselves. They suppress their nature. When you do that, bad things happen. They start looking in all the wrong places to substitute for those needs. A lot of guys, either online or in everyday life, they just, no, I'm fine. No, just go monk, bro. Don't have sexual desires. I clip my fingers. It's gone. Don't have to deal with it now. I used to see that. Just touch on this point. I used to see it with gang members. So when you look at drug trade, you look at gang recruitment, which has spiked rapidly. And all the different environments that it spreads into juvenile offender facilities, spreads into schools, spreads into the military, all these different areas. And there's three components to allowing that to happen, that allows that to thrive. That's anonymity, it's denial, and it's lack of awareness. That's how gang recruitment works. That's how they thrive. I see that online as well, and with guys in everyday life.
Yeah, they say the worst aspects of the online culture is anonymity and an audience. And then the worst aspects of the worst kind of people come out, and then the vulnerabilities of other people that get stepped on come out too, and they get sort of abused. And then it plays into, again, like if you weren't in the online culture, you could have potentially just easily become just a normal, middle of the road, well-adjusted person. You might have had a family, you might have had a job, you might have had friends, barbecues, whatever. But given the online culture, it's really changing the course of people's trajectory in life. I mean, we've talked about young guys in their teens who, they're male animals. They're undeniably sexually charged. They get a release with porn, but the fact that they can deny the gravitational pull of a woman because of how dangerous it is out there, their anxieties and how they've been fashioned in this culture, in sort of the online space, says a lot about how much men are changing. All right, let's go on to the next question. If men were allowed to play the game, in quotes, with the same rules that women have now, would they be the same evil?
Fuck, who constructed that? What? Break that down for me.
Basically, if men could play the same game women are playing today, would we do the same?
As in terms of the number of sexual options they have?
Yeah, the sort of how women are today, would we be little better than them if we had the same concessions and laws and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. No, we'd be vastly different. We'd be lifting a woman up. It wouldn't happen.
Yeah, my answer is no. We had, until this very small point in history, always had the ability to throw women under the bus, but we never did.
Yeah.
I mean, mainly due to biology, I suppose. Like, women are very precious biologically, so we tend to care about what we objectively know is precious, and so we take care of it. So this is the thing that I don't like today, is there's lip service to sort of the memes of today, like about caring and love and all this self-love and all this bullshit now, which may have a point in it, but it's been so bastardized that they don't actually practice it.
No.
You see how much they objectively care when you talk to someone, especially women. They want so much of love and understanding, and they kind of virtue signal how caring they are and how compassionate they are. But you just ask them 2 or 3 questions about their life and how they treat people and what their relationships with their parents are, and how their relationships ended and what their standards are. And you go, you're a leech. I can understand why you're alone. I can understand why you can't find love. You don't give any. We wouldn't be doing the same thing. We wouldn't be acting like women do if we were given the same sort of being let off the leash and doing whatever we can or whatever we want to, because women now, they can do no wrong. Simply because history, it's proven. It's not theoretical. Just look back beyond this point in time. Men could do pretty much whatever they wanted to women and around women, but we didn't. We generally took care of them. And you look a couple of 100 years ago, there's all, don't insult a woman's honor. Men fought for a woman's honor. They went above and beyond and even checked men in, other men would check other men if they actually abused or insulted women. It was part of our honor code to respect that which we respected, that we held as values, like, women. And, you look at the popular Game of Thrones, you just look at, there were some bad things, but the way they there was a lot of nobility put towards women. So this whole thing, would we act as bad? No, we wouldn't. And the proof is history. We didn't.
And I've seen it with guys. Like, I've been to a lot of functions and different things with gang members, so I've seen how they act, socially. They've got the woman there and all the rest of it. If a guy disrespects a woman, he'll get his head handed to him. It's, it doesn't happen. Like, it's different. The woman is part of him. There's a real authority there and all the rest of it. But if a guy lays hands on a woman, then the guy's going to get the shit kicked out of him. So I've seen it. And even with the worst of the worst, there is a moral code there. So no, absolutely not. Men would be completely different.
And this is a psychological trick that they fooled women with, is that when you say that, I can imagine that being devil's advocate, women will say, well, that's because men treat women like their property. That's why they defend women. It's not that they care about women. It's because they treat them like their property. They're chained to the sink. They're chained at home as their wife, and they're just baby machines. They don't actually defend or love women. They're sort of protecting their property. Women are like a man's favorite car.
I can say that with the woman in those households, I tell you what, they run things on a social level. So it is very much a partnership. That goes against the grain of what we've seen in films and all the rest of it, but it's very much that way. The woman tends a household, and there's a real level of social communication and jobs and I don't know how to describe it, sort of levels of how they operate. But there's always respect. And if a guy's beating his wife, the other guy pulled him aside and said, you can't have this, number one, because it's going to impact your work. Number two, you can't go around bashing women. It's going to bring heat on you. And then it's going to be a liability, all that kind of thing. And don't do it. Don't disrespect women. We don't want that.
Here's a question for you. I don't know if this was a question you were mentioning before, but it says there are a great deal of men who have unresolved trauma. Unfortunately, it seems that most mental health services are completely ill-equipped to treat men. That being the case, do you have any recommendations for how one could help with resolving these issues, whether through official channels or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, before you do that, because I've worked with guys that have gone through a great amount of trauma. So with veterans and other guys that have come up through really sort of abusive households, the first thing that needs to get set is a really solid, safe foundation. And that doesn't happen, and especially doesn't happen with men. That safety and that stability in your life is got to be first and foremost, and it's got to be an environment and a social environment, a social support environment that's going to be able to hold what you're about to go through. So you got to have some sort of shock absorbers there. There's got to be something there. So they've got to be able to have a relationship with people around them. They're going to support them, but a relationship with themselves, because a lot of shit's going to come up. You go through EMDR or schema therapy, especially I've seen it with vets. These guys will get up in the middle of the session. They have to do visualization, start punching the table, kicking doors. It's ripping open all these wounds. These guys can't function at the same. They can't work. They have to sit down and go through this before they can get to a stage before they can even consider that. And you get a lot of therapists, even in the prison environment, especially female therapists. It's like they're just emotion daredevils. Oh, yeah, I went into session, we're talking about the trauma he experienced as a child. I had tears in my eyes. I was holding his hand. He was telling me about all these guys that were raping him and doing all this. Oh, you should have seen the tears coming down my face. I was there with him. Okay, what do you know about his private life? Nothing. What do you know about his support network? Do you know if he has one? But there's no pre-care. There's no aftercare. And it's completely overwhelming for these guys. So none of that work has been done. You do that in the prison environment, he's either going to kill someone or he's going to get fucked up. You'd have to do an immediate transfer, put him into a worker unit, whatever. But you do that to someone in a prison environment, you're putting them in the line of fire.
Yeah, I think with I've noticed, especially with female therapists, and unfortunately they make up the bulk of therapy, 90-something%. Like they just think that emoting is helping. That like if I can get a person to cry, especially a man, I fixed him. Look, I got him to cry. Yeah, next, we're doing great work.
That's you're just opening up these traumas, and it's going to be brutal because it's going to be like flashbacks. He's going to be re-experiencing that trauma, and it's going to be completely overwhelming for him because, especially guys coming from that background, and especially men in general. I've gone through that kind of therapy myself, and I wasn't ready for it because none of that pre-work was done. So I had to start hitting up people like the veteran that I talked to you about, and he walked me through it. So there was a lot of stuff I had to do. He said, get the fuck out of therapy. He said, get away from that bitch. He said, come and talk to us. It's what we need to do.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and with a lot of guys as well, especially like with veterans and with criminals as well, they want to jump right into the bad shit that they have done. Oh man, this is what I kill people. I fuck people up. I've got to answer for this. I'm a piece of shit. Okay, well, you haven't looked at what happened to you. What set the stage for that? You've got to look at what you endured first, all those patterns in your early life, so you can connect the dots. The trauma set you up to do all these bad things. So you've got to be able to put things in context. And that's what's missing with men in therapy, especially. They haven't made sense of their trauma history. Because a man's trauma, a man's pain is never taken into account. Men are just painted as boogeymen. So that healing process, that gets bypassed. Because men, again, they're going to blame themselves. And the therapist is going to go along with it. They're not equipped for it. So,
yeah, it's kind of like they're a one-trick pony. Like all I was able to do was like hurt other people, and now my version of therapy is now I mentally kick myself as well.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of abuse. So I don't actually have any handles to hold in sort of a different existential way. Like, let me think potentially like somebody else that's helping me. Can I look at things from a different perspective? And they just don't know how to look at it from another perspective. They just know how to look at it with a blunt force trauma kind of aspect, whether it's other people, and now they'll do it to themselves, like, just whip themselves. And that's them like, I deserve this, that's them making amends, which again, it's not good.
Yeah. I can say it's somebody that's a man that's considering therapy. If he's had trauma, that's the first thing he needs to look at. What's his support network? Is there people that he can talk to outside of therapy? He's going to need that. Does he need to cut down on his hours at work? Because if he's going to go down this track, it's going to rip open a lot of old wounds. But first and foremost, you need to work with someone who's either got experience working with inmates or veterans or male issues exclusively, and vet your therapists. And you don't need to be an open book about your life, your everyday life. Just go in there with a specific idea of what you want to address. Like, I've got this issue in my life. This is the one issue I want to look at. Can we work on this? What steps are we going to take for pre-care and aftercare? How do you approach this? Last thing you want is someone just ripping open those wounds. It's asking for trouble.
Yeah. A lot of guys don't even have friends they can talk to.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, imagine a lot of guys who, the typical guy who gets in a relationship where she absorbs everything. His friends, like, she absorbs him. She doesn't want him to hang around his friends. It's basically just her and him. And once sort of he's sort of emptied out, and then the relationship ends, he's so alone, he doesn't have his friends anymore, and now he's looking for some therapist, which is another female. Yeah. It's just not a good place to be.
No, it sets you up. It's a very dangerous area as well. You've got to be careful with it. You've got to be careful about what you say in a therapy session to a female therapist. I'll say that now. It is. There's a lot of grey area there, and you've got to be careful. Not that anything would potentially happen, but don't expect you can come in there and talk about anything.
Oh, yeah, I remember when I was talking to Paul Elam, and sort of he does therapy with men. He even sort of says a similar thing. He sort of doesn't think very highly of female therapists because it's just all about them in the therapy when they should be thinking about the other person. Yeah, and it's all from their point of view. Like, a lot of them you'll be talking about your relationship, and they'll latch on to something that happened to them. And that'll be their expertise that they'll talk to you through. They're not really talking to you about you. They're talking to you through themselves about their own experiences, and that's their expertise. And also it's going to be biased about females. A lot of the literature in psychology these days is very female focused. They're by default the victims. And the way to fix men is to sort of man them up. Whereas with women, it's to kind of listen, really be present with the person who's talking, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas with men, it's kind of like, all right, he's coming in like a broken car. I'm listening for the faults, and sort of you're going to jump down the throat of all the faults that this car makes. Whereas, I mean, I know men and women are different, but the approach to psychological pain is not kind of dissimilar from the point of view of just listening to and trying to sympathize or empathize with another person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, another question. What advice would you have for the new, somewhat angry MGTOW that is going down the road of starting to hate women? First thing I thought of is resentful people always want the world to change for them. So if you recognize that in yourself and train yourself to accept everything, look at the world as it is, and then you sort of reflect on yourself and make rational decisions about the world based on simply what is true instead of what you really angrily want it to be, what it should be, and how you're taken advantage of. I think that's a good step.
Yeah, definitely. And hatred is an investment. It's like you said, it's a relationship. It's a toxic relationship.
Mm.
Yeah, and understanding, like I've said before, it's a key to acceptance. It's a key to moving on. It's a key to forgiveness. And you can't move on if you're so invested in anger and resentment. But, for a man, no one cares. No one cares if you're hurting. No one cares if you're angry. Like women today, they talk about women and all this resentment, anger porn and all this. They haven't just moved on from marriage. They've moved on from long-term relationships. They've moved on from dating. They're online. They have specific social circles. It's just this exclusive network bubble that they've built for themselves, full of repeat marketing. Their beliefs, what they believe, nothing gets challenged. Nothing. They are living in this little bubble that can't be permeated. Nobody can get through to it. Right? This is what's happening.
This is the childish thing that I want to have more sympathy for it, but I just can't. It's like children screaming for the things that they're denying themselves. So what you said is exactly true, where they're screaming for intimacy. Where are all the good men? Where is this? We want to have fulfilling lives. We want meaning. We want purpose. And you fight tooth and nail to lock the cage in your own little bubble where you will not come out and engage with anybody, but blame that you can't actually step out, but you don't want to step out of that cage. You're just really comfortable and you'll blame everyone and everything. And I see it predominantly and I think this might be a case where it's connected between men and women. Men tend to be downstream from women. And if women start acting like this, men just kind of follow suit. It's like the fashion of the 90s where women said they wanted sensitive new age guys. So then men became sensitive new age guys. And so if women are online acting as though they want something authentic, but the way they're operating is anything but, men start just going through the motions of doing the same thing. They're not happy. Women aren't happy. And because women are holding the reins of directing this social interaction now between the sexes, and the legal ramifications of men even trying to hold the reins or direct things make men think twice. Women are really shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's spilling out to other areas as well. I mean, you've seen a lot of channels get taken down. So, men talking about these issues, that's going to get shut down entirely. So channels are going to disappear. It's that line of communication is going to – it'll still get out there, but it'll be just restricted in certain spaces like YouTube and all the rest of it. But
it's ridiculous that you can't even speak. Like, I mean, I have sympathy for some of Stardust's recent videos where you had to play lexical hopscotch with the words he was using.
Right.
It's just ridiculous that you can't even say certain words that in and of themselves, you can't say the word women, or you can't say, the S word in terms of, people doing self-harm and ending their lives, things like that. It's just like you can't – it's just ridiculous because the robots will go, oh, there's that word, shut down. It's like there's no context. Like if there's no context with the words, if the words in and of themselves are banned without any context, then all we can say is fluffy bunny, blue sky, happy. We can't even say bad. I mean, even the words hate – it's like if there's no context, if just the words on their own are going to be censored, not even looked at. Contextually, we're fucked. Like, because how are we supposed to communicate then? Like, I can't, if I'm saying, if I try to go online, like I'm isolated, we talk about men isolated. I try and go online like this. I mean, they're policing actual content. Soon they'll be policing just normal conversations between people like you and I that aren't recorded. So, say I'm going online and I'm really in pain. I'm fumbling through fucking words where I can't say pain. I can't say, Spetsnaz, I really feel down. Down. That's a negative word. Everything has to be positive. Everything has to be a plastered figurative smile on every conversation. It's like you're making people more neurotically depressed.
Yeah.
Like people can't let anything out. and put like language being a pressure cooker where you close the lid and you're not allowed to let anything out.
Yeah.
It's just insane. I can't stand it.
It's become newspeak. Orwell talked about that. That's what it is.
Here's an interesting question. I've got a few of these. Would you have been married or raised a family in a different time in which female nature wasn't so apparent, such as in the 1950s? And someone else asked a similar question. If we had better family law system in place as in now, do you think you would consider marriage now? So they're all pointing to the same thing. If we didn't, if the laws and women weren't the way they were so overtly, they weren't such a sort of objective danger to the average guy, would we have gotten married and had families if this was the 1950s?
Yeah, probably I would have. I would have. I mean, knowing me, I'm part of my community, so I'd still be doing that thing in the community and all the rest of it. And through that, I'd probably have that expectation that I'd need to get married and have the family and have the house and all the rest of it. And you'd be getting all that pressure from your family as well. They went through the hard times and all the rest of it. So there was a real sense of, okay, we've really got to band together as a family. We've got this community network. Everybody's here together. We don't have that today. There's no community. Families are splintered. There's none of these social networks. If you look at certain demographics, they don't have to resort to all this online stuff. They get sexual options. They get introduced to other people through all these family networks that they have. So all that is still existing. So for them, a lot of them do get married. They don't see anything wrong with it. But because we're so splintered now and all of that's just been sort of shattered, rapidly decreasing into single motherhood and just one night stands, well, yeah, it's completely different reality. Back then, yeah, I'd imagine I would have.
Yeah, I think I would have as well back in the day. I've said in the past where I would have gotten probably married and had kids because it was a done thing, but I would have done it very early on, as in, or I've done that bit. I've gotten that out of the way. I've done my bit because everyone else did. I respect and love my family and I did what was right. And now I continue to go on, and I still would have been interested in writing philosophy, still would have done everything I wanted to do, but I wouldn't have been hamstrung like today. That's why I avoided it, because in today's time growing up, I saw a real big discrepancy between what historically was pushed by my parents and what they wanted for me. And the environment I was in, this world, wasn't the environment that they, like where they raised children. There wasn't the respect of men. There wasn't the cooperation between the sexes. It was all kind of very one-sided. And for someone who's sort of, a guy who's I've got a fair degree of self-preservation in me. I know that, but also I'm fairly rational where I can see that it's not a fair deal.
Yeah.
So I've said I'm fair, even in my 20s. Like I was annoyed that I don't care as a man if I give 80% as long as the woman gives 20%, which has kind of historically been that, some women give more, some give less. But to grow up, we're expected to give almost 100%, and you're grateful for one every now and then when she feels like it, when she's in a good mood. It's like, fuck that. I mean, in any other kind of cooperative, whether it's a conversation with a person, like if one person's just drowning you out with their point of view and you can't speak, or anything that's so lopsided, it's like, it's uncomfortable because it's not fair. And I know with men and women, the relationship with them, I know it's not fair, biologically speaking, given how we interact and how we cooperate. But fuck, come on, it's gone such a long way that the seesaw's hit the ground at this point. It used to be sort of balanced, women would get more benefits and men would have to do a lot more, but we'd be fine with it. We don't need very much as men. We're very simple. But to get nothing, not even self-respect, and to be laughed at as a clown as you do all the work, it's kind of like you look at some of movies where you see even the mob bosses or anyone, if they've got a bodyguard that's doing all the hard and dangerous work, they give them a little bit of respect and they treat them well because they know that they need to rely on them for a bit. Men are like bodyguards that women are slapping in the face. Yeah. We've kind of got Stockholm syndrome at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I say, it's women receive love. They don't give love. And a lot of it is because men don't ask. They don't ask for love. They don't ask for affection. They don't even have the expectation of love, especially today. Or if they do, they don't express it. You know, especially today, for fear of how that woman's going to react. So a lot of guys think, okay, well, if I break up with her, I'm going to go another 5 years without meeting someone. How am I going to meet someone? Well, she treats you like shit. Well, she's my only option. Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a good friend who, he's a smart guy, very well accomplished in a particular STEM subject in a field. Basically, he'd be able to live 10 lifetimes with his salary. And he's thinking of marrying a girl who keeps running off.
Right.
And he's not even engaged to her, and he's bought her a Mercedes. Just fuck, you can't speak to this man. I can't. Because he's kind of into, like, we talk philosophically sometimes, but he's more on the ephemeral, vague side about sort of the universe and energy and, you know, karma and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I can only stomach it to a practical point.
Yeah.
So you can't. I think it.
Well, obviously, his girlfriend isn't.
Oh, fuck,
she's very material.
Oh yeah. I've asked him how many times has she left, and he couldn't count the number of times, and they've only been together for like a year and a half or 2 years. She keeps disappearing when they have an argument, and she decides to come back, and she never apologizes ever. They just kind of reconcile and they keep going forward. And he was actually telling me, like, you know what, I think I've been selfish. Like, you know, I've been, you know, building my business, you know, I've been alone for so long. I've been a bit too hard, like not letting anyone in. Maybe this is a lesson. Maybe I just need to. And I'm listening to him. I'm going, fuck, dude. You can't say anything to him. I think there was another question here was saying, like, something about red pilling people. Yeah, is it wise to overtly or covertly red pill people? One question was with teenage guys, or just generally with people you know. Should you red pill other people? And these people, you can't. Don't bother. They will resist and fight you. The only people you should start sharing stuff with, and you don't even need to label it red pill. It's just talk honestly this way. Yeah. And communicate and help men like men always used to mentor other men, give advice, talk to each other the way other men can only understand and hear. But if they're locked in like that, like my friend, he's going to fight me at every turn. So I don't try. I laugh at him when he's being ridiculous so he can actually maybe reflect. I don't need to say anything, but I'm not going to try and force him because he's just going to try and strong arm me because he really just wants, he's asking me to confirm his biases and I refuse to do that.
But it's sometimes it's always going to go back to learning to assert yourself through words and through body language as a man. You know, I always see that as a necessity. I think you see a lot of men a lot of younger guys especially just sort of withdrawing, but it's going to kick them in the ass. But I mean, like I was at a dinner the other week, and there was this woman there. She's a clinical psychologist, and she's very loud. And her husband looks like I know the guy, but he looks like his soul has been drained from his body. He sits there silently, never get a job in PR. But I'm like, she's sitting there, and she's so loud and opinionated. You know, Trump is a psychopath. I'm apolitical. I don't care. But I'm asking, what do you think that? I'm across the table. I said, because of this. Like what? What specifically? And I'm asking her across the table, and nobody challenged it, but I always do. And she can't clarify any of her points. It's all just emotion. And she's a clinical psychologist. And it's
God.
All the guys they're all smirking, looking at me, and all the women are engaged, trying to take up for her. But I'm having fun with it. But I'm engaging in a manner where I'm asking questions, right? Because I want to understand her perspective, but I'm also demanding, in a way, that she invests in the conversation, and I wanted to examine her own rationalizations, which she ends up doing because she paints herself into a corner. But, you know. Yeah.
I've noticed that. I've met a couple of psychologists, and most of them are female. I've actually dated one. And what I've noticed is they always think they're right. And it's no surprise that this male, her partner, is just sort of beaten down and mute.
She calls him an idiot. Where is that idiot? He's late. You know, this is your first one. Little puppy.
Here's another question that's similar to the previous one. If you could go back, would you still take the red pill? Answers for and against.
Well, I guess I was always going that way. I don't know when did it happen for me. I was stumbling across some content, and with Sharon Osbourne talking about that woman that castrated her husband.
Oh, yeah.
So that was kind of a big turning point, but I'd already been sort of going that way. I was looking for, I don't know, other guys' experiences of how they were experiencing the world and, sort of relationships between men and women. So I'd obviously been looking for something. I think I stumbled across Man, Woman, Myth, then Barbarossa, but I was always out there looking for answers. I think when I started getting online, it's immediately sort of where I was drawn to, sort of male experiences. What are these guys? Is it similar to mine? Is this what guys are going through? So I think I was already down that track. It would have happened.
Yeah, I think guys that are built like you and I, just progressively of your own accord, you see or listen to something and something in you goes, what?
Yeah.
No, what? Like, no, that's bullshit. Like, it doesn't just go in one ear out the other. Like, and that door just gets open wider and wider, and you get more and more confident with calling things out, and it actually enlivens you. Society and women in general, they were parroting everything the media was saying, and I was saying, fuck this, no way. Like, my life on my own is happy and content. All I could see is people ruining my tranquility. All I can see is these women taking away the happiness of my life. Like, here on one side, I've got my family and my freedom, my autonomy and my good life with friends and so forth. And this person will come in and they'll take up more time. Am I prepared to let this person take up so much time?
Yeah.
And resources and rule my life. I mean, I've got eyes. As you said, you observe other men who are miserable. And if you've got two brain cells to rub together, you can picture yourself as that man. And you think, good God, I'm glad I'm not you. Like, I have sympathy, but I'm not going to be that man. I'm not going to be you at all. And all I have to do is look at the woman you're with. If any woman comes my way that exhibits some of those characteristics that I can actually see contribute to that hell and that misery you're living in, I'm just going to avoid it. It's not rocket science. It's not a complex equation.
Yeah. I mean, and it's hard for a guy not to be red pill today. I mean, it's encroached into every aspect of their life. It's encroached online, into gaming, into everyday work life, everywhere. It's everywhere.
It's like, should you red pill guys? It's kind of like guys are going to be red pill because your survival instinct comes into play. Mm-hmm. Like, your natural survival instinct goes, I'm under threat here. I can see this threat from an airplane. Like, then you start to ask questions. Then there's this thing screaming in you, which is just an uncomfortable feeling. But then the moment you can have words, like you discovered sort of the Manosphere and some phrases from especially poignant writers, you start reading, you start exploring, they start putting words to your feelings of anxiety. You go, oh, fuck, here's a pair of glasses to put on these feelings. And now I can articulate and put words to what I don't like or what I was fearful about. Because there's nothing worse than just having an awful feeling. You don't know what it is. You don't know why. You don't have the words for it. And you don't have a frame of reference or even a compass to point to sort of what it is. Which probably brings us to the next question of which aphorisms or any other type of writing has impacted you the most?
I think I've touched on quite a few of them, sort of Kafka, and there was all those ones that sort of back in the day. But I remember, so when I started getting into, I was always searching for really male sort of masculine stories. I was always that way. I remember I came across a story because I love Hemingway. I love Mailer. Mailer's Tough Guys, Mailer's Executioner's Song. Oh, my God, just absolutely brilliant. And there was one by Hemingway, and it was a collection of short stories. It was written in the early 30s, and it was called Winner Take Nothing. I think it's about 30 stories in there, but all of them, they went nowhere. And every one of the characters failed. They were all alcoholics. They just, their lives were complete shit. It was brutal.
Mm.
There was one about these two waiters, and the whole story is them just criticizing this old guy in the corner. Another guy is searching for a sunken treasure, and he comes back for it, and it's all gone. And these other guys, raging alcoholics. It was great. It was just, this was a slice of life. I could actually see real people, and there was a lot of real people that I knew in my everyday life at the time, unfortunately. But it resonated with me. So it's like, wow, this is real life stuff.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the way we think today, especially for men, because we have to engage with the world and find meaning and connect concepts to sort of make the world workable for us and into interactions and things like that, is that writing in the past, there's a lot of subtext that you would understand what it actually meant. And in that way, you need to sort of mentally be attuned, and it'd be a bit of hard work, but it would make the reward that much more poignant, and it would hit you that much more. For instance, you read The Old Man and the Sea. It's not about a man fishing. No. And it's not just that it's necessarily a male story, but that kind of hero's journey or sort of very like a tale that imparts a message really resonates and tells you a lot about life. Whereas today the stories are gone. Everything's so literal. I think that's why a lot of guys are lost, because there's no concepts or meaning in terms of a story to sort of imbue it into a man's life. So today everything's kind of like, she's hot, she did this, she betrayed him, she screwed him over, they cheated on this person, they broke their promise. It's all real childhood stuff. There's no sophistication. There's no allegories. There's no deep meaning to embed. It doesn't hit you like an atomic bomb. It's all surface level soap opera. It's all chewing gum.
Is there any novels that, because I know we've got Twilight and all the rest of it, but that's for the girls. Is there anything for the young men today that they read that you know of? I can't think of anything.
No, I can't think of anything either.
I don't know.
That was a difference in the day, I think. Like, guys would read Hemingway because it was for us. Yeah. Whereas today, guys don't care about themselves. And so they'll go watch Twilight because, what are the women interested in? That base is really gone from men's learning and imparting of knowledge and concepts and stuff. There's not much there. You're right.
And Hemingway, he used to pose. He used to, I'm the braggart, I'm the tough guy, I'm the boxer.
Yeah.
I remember going down to Mexico. I was in Tijuana for a long time, and I was like, I'm Hemingway. I'm living life here. I'm drinking whiskey. Convincing myself. So he was the same.
I really like his style of writing more than most other writers of that era. Like, I like him better than F. Scott Fitzgerald. But Hemingway I like because it was very basic. I think I like Hemingway for the same reasons I like Bukowski. There's no show, but Hemingway really did push. I could really feel he was trying to, but not I'm not putting him down. Like, I really respect him. His search I found really admirable. But then, like, after his death, I mean, he took his head off with a shotgun. But after that, I remember I sort of gleaned that his wife, Mary, I think it was, Mary Hemingway's books, and it was revealed that in their private life, he used to cross-dress for her.
Oh, fuck you. Did he?
Did I just ruin?
Oh, no.
And I mean, I don't know if this is sort of false, but I remember reading passages where she was writing her biography and she revealed that privately he used to like her calling him his little girl. And so I think with Hemingway, there was a real want to be more than like what he should be. I don't know what pressures he was having internally, but certainly his writing, I think, was really masculine.
He's a great writer. He's a great writer, and she's a lying bitch.
Maybe. So, like, I was really surprised to hear about that. So I hope I don't ruin anyone's.
No, don't worry about it.
But myself, in terms of writers, I'm always like a bird that's always picking and finding things that serve me. I'm just glad to collect and find writers. There's not one writer that's my favorite, then I'll exclude all others. Yeah. But in terms of it's always I tend to find that it's the writers that are much more philosophers than just writers that I keep coming back to time and time again. So I, for instance, I think Dostoevsky's one of my favorite philosophers, even though he's not thought of as one. He's thought of just as a writer. Yeah. In terms of philosophers, there's Epictetus. He's probably my favorite. There's a quote of his, "You become what you give your attention to."
Right.
That's always something I remember. And in terms of writers, or actually, again, they're philosophers really, is Michel de Montaigne. He's not that very well known, but he was really, he came up with some great lines in terms of masculinity and women as well. But back in sort of, I can't remember, hundreds of years ago when he lived, a couple of his, I care not so much what I am to others as what I am to myself. I will be rich by myself and not by borrowing. I thought that was a really great sort of referential sort of quote. Another one of his was, if there is such a thing as a good marriage, it is because it resembles friendship rather than love.
Right.
And another one was, I write to keep from going mad from the contradictions I find among mankind.
That's
and
good.
Hemingway, Bukowski, as writers, like there's just too many to point out.
It was the one that, because I've always had a big passion for Yukio Mishima as well. That was one that really stuck out for me. That really hit me between the eyes. I love Mishima's work. It's real poetry. It's beautiful. And again, he's like Hemingway. He's clawing up, reaching up for that sort of masculine ideal, and a lot of that was fantasy, but it was lovely prose. Amazing writer.
Yeah, I remember. I think one of F. Scott Fitzgerald's quotes stuck in my mind when I made that video about the hero last year, where he says, "Show me a hero, and I'll write you a tragedy."
It's true, sadly.
It's funny with that video. I remember, like, it's a popular video, and a lot of guys liked it, but there were a lot of guys who actually pushed back at me, saying, "What's wrong with being a hero?" As though I was shattering their dreams. And I said, there's nothing wrong, but ask yourself why you want to be a hero. And it's usually in reference to a female. You don't really you don't find much of being heroic attractive other than for a female, if they're being honest. Like, if it's about the other qualities about honor and stuff like that, you use those words. They're wrapped around hero. It's not really being a hero. You don't need to be a hero for your friends. You tend to be a hero for women, children, and the city, but not for yourself. When it's about you or your brothers, you don't really use the word hero.
No. And you don't hear that from veterans. Veterans never talk about that. They talk about brotherhood.
Exactly.
And if they talk about things that they've done over there, they're oftentimes, sadly, they talk about the bad things they've done. But they would return back there in a heartbeat if they could, because they've got that brotherhood. That's what draws them back. But they don't talk in heroic terms. It just doesn't happen.
Here's another one. Is introspection a weakness or a strength, considering that the world is becoming more and more superficial every day?
Well, he's right about the latter. What was it? It's on the Temple of Apollo. It was 3,000 years ago. It was to know thyself. He was right. And I mean, if you break down people, how they behave in any kind of avenue of life, people look at, like, if they have a positive result, they're going to link that to internal qualities. Like, I did that because I've got an ability for it. It's my mental ability, it's my intellectual ability, it's my physical capacity. It's because of me I did this. If something goes wrong, well, no, it's the workplace. It's shit. It's somebody else's fault. It was the ref. He was off. It wasn't me.
Mm. So,
I mean, you can't change habits unless you're doing that kind of introspection and have a higher level of self-awareness. But, habits, I mean, they're very hard to change. But the change is only going to happen with that level of heightened self-awareness.
Yeah, it's very hard for a man, other than, like you mentioned previously about that the gang member who the only way he can self-reflect is to kick himself.
Yeah.
That's the only way he can atone. But it's really when you can say, it's all my fault, but I'm not blaming myself. Like, it's a really hard trick to pull off if you're not used to doing it, or if you can't actually do it mentally. It's a mental trick to be able to kind of do it. And sometimes it takes practice. But in terms of introspection being a weakness or a strength, I can actually see it being a weakness for the man that's not built for it. If he doesn't have the internal tumblers and mechanisms, both mental and verbal, and way of understanding himself, if he doesn't naturally come to it, then it is going to be a weakness. So, for instance, you and I, we gravitated towards writers, and certain quotes they didn't just sound clever, they really resonated. Like you said, it hit you between the eyes. It changed your world. And often they push you in a direction of life and to help you see a vast horizon that you never would have otherwise. Like those kind of men, introspection and writing really does help. It's a strength. But for the person that doesn't give a shit, who doesn't read, who doesn't, who, like I said before, watches the Matrix and all they see is the action sequences and none of the philosophy, then I see it could be a weakness. You're better off not discovering the Manosphere and just following your rudimentary life and thinking, yeah, women, what do you do? This job I hate. Oh, well, what are you going to do? You're better off living a life of low-level irritation because that's naturally where you're at. You don't have the muscle for anything else. And I think a lot of guys, they do themselves a lot of disservice where they think they can be more than what they're capable of. I'm not saying they shouldn't be more or the best person they can be. But some men romanticize just a person, an act. It's not really them.
Yeah. And we saw it during this lockdown as well. It's like people that preferred to be told what to do rather than to think critically. And I can understand that. It's if you go out there and I've seen it with a lot of people and you can watch their body language. Like they draw into themselves or they want to avoid situations where they're required to be self-aware because they've got a fear that they're going to be, subject to criticism. And also there's going to be heightened self-criticism, based on all the previous experiences. So you're out there flailing in the wind. I'm going to speak outside the box now and people are going to come down on me and I'm going to look like a fool. So it's best just to go with conformity. So they can do that. But a lot of the prisoners that I've worked with as well, it's the power of introspection. It's getting them to make those connections. So being aware of their thoughts and actions in relation to those emotional triggers and those emotional responses so they can think clearly, connect the dots and not act out. So that's basically what it is. So they have less of a reactionary response and that comes more efficient, safer ways of interacting with people and with the world. And then you get increased self-confidence as a result of that. So they're aware of their strengths and weaknesses. And it sounds stupid. I mean, a kid could work it up. A lot of men don't, especially from those kinds of backgrounds. You can create boundaries by looking and understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. You're creating boundaries and you're creating growth with respect to those strengths and weaknesses. That creates more opportunities because you're saying, okay, I made this happen because I've undertaken this course or I've done this. Now I have these skills. Now, because success is now happening because of the skills that I've undertaken.
Mm.
But, a kid can work that out. A lot of these guys can't. They think they've just been led around by their nose, like a lot of people in society. So they haven't made that connection yet. So it gives them a sense of empowerment.
I was thinking about this the other day. I was listening to Richard Grannon talking about, because he used to be a bouncer. I don't know if you've ever watched any of his YouTube videos. He talks about psychology and a lot of narcissism and things like that. And he used to be a bouncer for 10 years. So he used to run around with a lot of violent guys. And he sort of said something fairly that made me think in terms of a broader sense of a guy like today, the longer you let things go, and he was talking about in a fight, he goes, the longer you don't stand up for yourself in a fight, a person kind of punches you, knocks you to the ground. Yeah. And whether it's in the context of a relationship that you don't like the person you're with, they're putting you down and the longer you let it go, or if it's broadly in your life, if you're bitter all the time and you let that go, he sort of says the longer you let it go like a fight, it's never getting any better. So I think guys that find that they're in this cycle of hatred, the longer you let it go and you don't get up and stand up for yourself or change your tactic, change your stance, change your position, try something new, talk to better people, stop talking to people or interacting with people where when you come away from it, you feel depleted, whether it's a girl or other men in the Manosphere. Like the longer you let a fight go, I remember he said, the worse it is. It does not get any better.
Yeah. And you stop seeing yourself as an object, which a lot of men do. They just see themselves as a utility. No, they're the ones that are in charge of their own change. But for a lot of guys, they still haven't worked that out. And I used to be like that when I was growing up. I mean, I was hell on wheels. But the difference between me and guys today is I had a lot of chances. I had 4th, 5th, 6th chances A lot of guys today don't get that. You know, I could act out and they'd be like, oh, he's just, you know, he's kicking off. It doesn't matter. Like, you're done? You're okay now? All right.
Well, case in point as well. Like, so I'm just reflecting on yourself, for instance. If you didn't have a natural interest in literature, if that didn't draw you, where do you think you'd be now?
Yeah, I think I'd be pretty lost. I would have gotten drawn into some pretty bad sort of circles, I think, because that's where I was going. And for me, literature and all the rest of it showed me an outside world. And also when I got into boxing, I did a lot of traveling with boxing, and I met a lot of different people. And I remember distinctly when I was a teenager, and I was going to it was a big championship tournament, all the rest of it. And I'm sitting across from this guy. He's Dutch. And he's a good-looking son of a bitch, and he's got these girls on, 2 blondes on either side of him. And he's telling me about his life. He travels here. He does this. His family's this. His family's that. He lives in this beautiful place. He's got these beautiful girls around him. And all I'm thinking in the back of my head is, fuck you. I said, I'm going to make you bleed in the ring. I'm going to make you piss blood for a month. And it's just, but he opened up my mind. I said, there's a world outside of my world. And for a lot of guys growing up in my environment, they never saw that. But I was seeing it in front of me. And literature opened my eyes to that in a different way. So it gave me a framework or a structure that I could work with. It gave me a language. There were certain things I could say, certain things I could test out, and perspectives. It was like I was aping or mirroring what I read, and I was testing that out in real life. I was saying, does this work? Okay, it's getting this reaction. I literally, I guess it was like being autistic. But that's I was trying to communicate with people from different walks of life. And the people that I was meeting, a lot of these people, they gave me a lot of time, especially adults. They listened to me and they engaged with me. And they could see that words were just coming out of my mouth. That's okay. They listened. And they asked me questions and they took an interest in me. And they could see promise and all the rest of me. So that changed my perspective. So I was lucky in that regard.
I think that touches also on when people ask the question, should you red pill other people, your friends and so forth, especially when you can see sort of dangers. If they don't have the same inclination, say, that you did, where you were just going blah, you know, you're searching, you can actually tell when a person's looking for answers as opposed to ramming your religion down their throat. And I think that's what some guys tend to do without knowing it. They see parts of the Manosphere as religious and sect-like things, and they want to convert others. It's like, no, this stuff is supposed to inform and make you a better person. And when you discover other guys that you want to help, especially your friends, you can sort of expand that and talk to each other. Like with me, with the literature, it was literally, I had no mentors or guys around me that were talking about these sort of important things. And so I was only mentored by these writers. They were the only ones that I was having great conversations with.
Yeah. And you see a lot of guys, well, I don't know about online anymore, but a lot of the young guys that I engage with, I mean, they're seeking to understand things. Yeah. And then you get some guys, mostly the older guys, who are very firm in their beliefs, and that's it. You know, there's no room for any sort of dissenting opinions. But the guys that have the more experience and guys who do get certain answers from other men, like, you sit around and I'll stand back, and the guys will start talking and sort of either pull a guy into line, or they'll tell them about something or their experiences, your experiences and all the rest of it. But I guess what you get online is sort of a lack of engagement and a lack of application of knowledge. And you get a lot of guys becoming risk adverse. But without engagement, how do you progress? Because you're right about the campfire. That's what it's like. If I'm sitting around with a whole group of men, it's men communicating with each other. And they're doing that now more than what I've seen before. And guys are pretty much of the opinion that things have changed dramatically, socially, sexually, in society, or the rest of it. And they're pretty aware that things are happening and that men are getting the short end of the stick. They can't verbalize it, but I don't see so many defenses now. I don't see, oh, well, hold on, not all women are like that. No, you're wrong about, no, I don't see that anymore. I see a lot of guys just thinking and contemplating about it and trying to connect dots. They can't quite do it. And you can nudge it along a little bit, but I wouldn't push too hard. But I'm seeing that now. There's less defenses and more guys asking questions.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's kind of, back in the day when you spoke about, at least, like, I got tired of seeing the creeping qualification of you just simply want to talk about the nature of men and women in whatever respect you want to, right? And you have to kind of qualify by saying, I'm not a misogynist. I'm not saying men and women can't do whatever I'm not. And like, it's kind of, okay, dude, all right, just say what you want to say. And we have to tend to, like, I started seeing more and more of it, to the point now that so much language is censored that guys don't even bother addressing the topic, and they can't even think in that topic because we've gone from over qualifying, just talking about the realities of day-to-day life and men and women, to now you can't even talk about certain things because you're not allowed to speak certain words, that you just don't even engage in those conversations, which means you understand less about the world you engage in.
I guess because the guys that I hang out with, a lot of young guys, they've still got sort of social networks, but the networks are mostly, it's like 99% male. And yeah, I'll go hang out with them and all the rest of it, and we'll go to pubs that no woman would ever come into. They just, it wouldn't be to their liking. But you can sit down, and these guys are being pretty open about where they're at in life and what they want and all the rest of it. So I'm seeing that get communicated. I'm not seeing that from the older guys. The older guys sort of shut themselves off. I'm talking about Gen X. And a lot of guys just, they won't go out to drink. They won't go out and socialize. They'll drink at home. They'll bring a few lads over and sit in the garage. But so I think a lot of that socialization has dropped off completely. Guys can see if they go out, there's no women. So what's the point? But
yeah, that's a good point, actually. I noticed that too. Like, I think my generation was one of the last where it was, we're into clubs, bars, things like that. That was the place to go. And I remember I think I was, out of all my friends, I was one of the first to go online and start dating when dating sites were starting. And It was almost as though you're telling people you're looking at porn online. It was so kind of, you'd keep hush hush about it. It was embarrassing. No one would admit it. Even girls would say, if anyone asks how we met, don't tell them we met online. It seems like it's really sleazy, but now it's the norm. Like, if you actually met, if you said, I picked her up in the supermarket, it's like, oh wow, that's really rare. That's odd. And it's a real shame that social interaction has been reduced to that. You don't go out and just talk with your mates at a bar. Yeah. You don't call up your mates. My friends, if I call them up and just, they'll say, oh, they're surprised I'm calling them. And they're asking for a reason. I said, no, I just wanted to call you up, see how you're doing. Yeah. So just a lot has gone. And from a lot that's lost, that a lot of guys listening to this might think is fairly innocuous, you don't realize the domino effect of other things, other sort of, the branches from that oak tree that atrophy, that die, that no longer sort of have any life in them. And you wonder why, why am I so anxious in this setting? It's because you've cut off this aspect of your life. Whereas I don't feel anxious in it because I've still got the residue of it in the way I was brought up in terms of how I interacted with people. You're solely online and in front of a screen with your head down. You're all just sort of living alone in your echo chamber, and you're throwing mud at the world and self-aggrandizing each other. And you're all perfect, you're great, you're nice guys or whatever, but like the world is shit. It's kind of like it's a nice little world to live in, but it's not the real world. It's fictional. You're writing your own story and you're all part of it. You're all collectively writing a novel where you're all characters in it. But you'll only read it, no one else will.
Yeah. It comes down to self-image as well. And I'm not taking away from what's happening socially on the grand scale of things. I'm just talking about people that I've worked with, especially young guys. That everybody has a self-image. You have a self-image, I have a self-image, right? And somebody contradicts that or says it's something else and tries to, I don't know, attack that self-image. Well, we're going to dig our heels and we're going to get defensive. Well, it's the same if someone's got negative self-image. Right? They see themselves as a loser. I'll point out some good characteristics about that person. Oh, you're good at this. You're caring for these people. You're quite empathetic. You've got these skills. There's these good qualities about you. Well, they're going to be really cringe about it because it feels safer to have that negative self-image. And then I'm also imposing on them. You've got to live up to this good opinion that I've just placed on you. Well, fuck you. I don't want to live up to your high expectations. I'm going to stay in my corner and I'm going to quietly hate myself. The world's fucked. I don't want to invest. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm going to have to. This is safer. It's risk adverse. So I understand that. I've seen that 100 times. But you come to a place of acceptance, okay, and understanding. You seek the understanding. You look at things on a wider scale. Okay, these things are outside of your control. There was a quote by Yukio Mishima, and he said, possessing by letting go is a secret unknown to youth. Okay, so let go of the outcome. There are things that you don't control in this life. You're the agent of change, right? I could ask a young man, okay, you're telling me about these people looking down their nose at you. Are you less than them? Are you worth less than them? They're no. Okay, why don't you start treating yourself with a bit of self-respect, son? It's what do you do to take care of yourself? Walk me through it. By then I would have built up a bit of rapport, but it's just because things are the way they are, it doesn't make you any less than. You're in charge of your life. Nobody cares that you're suffering. The only person you're hurting is you. And these guys, they're cutting themselves off. By the time they reach their 40s, it's going to be fucking devastating. I can guarantee it.
Yeah, it's what I was saying before. The longer you let dysfunctional behavior go, things you're not happy about in yourself,
it's going to be horrific. Yeah,
it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks the longer you let it go.
Yeah, it's going to be devastating. I don't know what that's going to look like in 20 years. It's not going to be pretty.
God, jeez. It's what's going to be worse is the degree to which they can actually hide the statistics because everyone's living online. So you can just kind of play with the facts. People won't know the reality.
Yeah, it's going to spark up. I mean, it's going to be like Britain in the 80s. There's going to be riots. There's going to be young men acting out. There's going to be no employment. It's going to kick off. It's going to happen. They feel there's no hope, so they...
But they could be that much more effective if there was a bit more intellect behind it. But I suppose it's not their fault entirely because, they're censoring everything. You try and you keep hitting your head against a brick wall. You can't use certain words. So at the end of the day, think, oh, fuck, what... I either play a role in this awful movie and that's the only way I can be animated in this life, or I just kind of sit alone at home and I don't bother talking to anyone because it's just too hard. I just can't even find myself. The general world doesn't like what I say. I'm already the enemy simply because I'm a male, and they've got this magnifying glass out for every word I say, just waiting to stamp on my head at anything that's patriarchal. Whereas I might just be talking as a guy. I'm not being offensive, but they're just looking to be offended at something. They're all hammers looking for nails. Yeah.
The thing is that the nails aren't going to stay down forever. They're going to keep popping up. But there's a question there. Why do so many of us men, I don't know if you've asked it, focus on the negatives of female nature and overlook the opportunities of being a self-actuated man? I think it plays into the same thing. It's fear. It's easier to invest in anger and resentment than move forward. Let go of the only thing that actually makes you feel alive. And there's a lot of guys just out there just smelling blood and just marketing to that. Here's your anger porn.
I mean, the easiest way to know something to be true or what you want to stand up for yourself is to say no. I mean, children, that's in psychology, they realize that's when they become self-aware. They realize like, no, you realize yourself, you want something. And so I see a lot of guys stuck in the no phase. They've regressed to sort of, and the no comes out as women, I don't want to do this. I'm tired of being a slave. I'm being treated unfair. But there's little of the cataphatic yes. There's the little of the civilized, progressive, in the real sense of the word, progressive, moving forward, actualized yes. Moving up that pyramid, Maslow's. Like there's very little of that. It's all the survival, no. I want to be free, which I get, but they stay there. And the censorship of language and the desert of male mentors and men speaking is exacerbating it all. So they're just stuck in this low level of barely able to say no. The most courageous men simply just say no and little else. But you don't see any pioneers saying yes. That's the lack out there, I think.
Yeah, and it's even when I engage with other people, I want to understand where they're coming from. Like I do that with men and women. That's I interact with men and women all the time. So you've got to be able to take on board their perspective as well. The people that I've been challenged by so many people just in regards to how they view things, and it's changed my perspective entirely. I've had that from women. I've had it from men. Sometimes it's been deliberate. Sometimes it's been incidental. But if you close yourself off to that, then you're closing yourself off to opportunities for change and opportunities to see things from a different perspective. I don't know if that would resonate with young guys today, but as you get older, you appreciate that more. It's very rare as an older guy that, that something will actually hit you and go, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, no, that made me think differently about something. I get that with a lot of your videos. I get it with Stardust videos. Even your one about marketing, why they do marketing and why they make movies bomb. I think that's different. That made me think. I've had a lot of moments watching your videos like that.
It's just down to me just being curious and interested. And I think it comes down to I talk to men and they're just not interested. You don't have to see things the same way as me. You're your own person in the same way I am. Just be interested enough in your own life to sort of self-reflect. You don't have to be a sage. You don't have to become a philosopher. But by dint of the word, you become a philosopher when you start asking questions and being interested enough in your life, and you start trying to put down words, whether or not it's, you start writing them down yourself in a diary, or you start writing more extensively, you start reading. But yeah, just be interested enough in your own, that's what I can't understand, like bitching about the world, but you don't give a shit about yourself. It's like, what are you bitching about? Like, why do you want the world to care about you when you don't?
Yeah. There was another question here though. So, when you can see someone you care about setting themselves up for obvious failure, how do you best distance yourself emotionally while still remaining attached enough to be their friends? And it touches on what you just said, and it's about establishing boundaries. Because a lot of people, they're set on self-destruct, and it can be in little ways, or you can have an addict, or you can have a criminal, or you could have, people who come out of a different background, trauma background. But a lot of what they go through, these toxic relationships, one after another. People like this. You've seen them. I used to be one of them. But they do it, and it's because they feel empowered. Yeah, they leave that trail of interpersonal destruction behind them. But they have control over that. And we've all had friends. You know them. They cut themselves off from you. They used to be your friend, but now they're in their new relationship. You don't hear from them for 2 years. Now, all of a sudden, they got kicked to the curb. Now they want to talk to you, but they only talk about their problems. Yeah. So you become the emotional tampon. Every guy's had an experience like that. But it's about men putting themselves first, not being taken for granted, not allowing themselves to be stepped on. Because if we don't put our needs first, they won't get met. So we've got to come from the perspective that other people, lower the expectations. Other people have no understanding of our experience as men or any consideration for our experience. They don't care about our feelings. They don't care about our experiences. And our insights are typically, especially today, seen as irrelevant or troublesome. But we've got to be able to first maintain and establish those boundaries, find your voice, speak up for yourself, and see that you're a quality person, not just an object. You're not just there for other people. It's got to be a two-way street. I don't see a lot of guys doing this. I try to instill this in a lot of young guys, and there seem some take it on board. But you've got to do it more.
In terms of the question, when you see someone you care about setting themselves up for obvious failure, like for me, it's tough because as a person you might care about them, you probably do, especially if they're a friend or someone in your life. But all you can do is warn them sympathetically. I think, offer them, but again, you can't sort of religiously try and convert them and strong arm them. They're going to fight you, like I mentioned, my friend.
Yeah.
So basically, you leave the decision up to them. But if simply being around them also causes you anguish, though, like you have to reconcile that within yourself, or you have to leave. You can't be a punching bag, but then also they can't be your punching bag of red pill propaganda or whatever.
Yeah. Imagine, I don't know. I've never done that to someone, but I imagine it'd be quite a sight if someone just bombarded them with MGTOW. There you go.
I hear guys say it all the time. I don't know what to think about it. Like,
it'll be something to watch.
Yeah, I've heard guys message me and say my friend was going through A, B, and C, and it's nothing small. It's like a divorce, or it's he was about to marry someone and said, I gave him your videos. Or I gave him Stardust or Spetsnaz, or it's kind of like, I wonder what that kind of does. Whether it's too much or, I don't know what to think about it. Oh, there was one question I forgot to mention. Guy said, since every effing subject of the corner of the Manosphere has been talked about, what particular subject do you feel has slipped through the cracks?
I think we've kind of...
That's probably answered it in some form.
I don't know. I mean, touching on the same things, I think it's just reduced a lot I'm not online a lot, so maybe I'm wrong. But a lot of it's reduced to just memes and slogans from what I can see. So it's the equivalent of throwing a book of memes at a guy in pain and saying, here you go, this will fix it. There you go, here's a slogan. Go monk, bro. There you go. But it's like we say, a lot of men are cut off today. They're isolated. They're resentful. And it's going to spill out one way or another. Just saying do this or do that, it's not going to help that person in that phase, and they're limiting themselves. So you suppress those vital elements of a male psyche and his body and his needs and his desires. Bad things happen. It's going to come out. He's going to look in all the wrong places, substitute those needs. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is really like if you just give people a whole bunch of videos to watch, it is like the equivalent in the past. You just hand someone a book and you hope it's going to be a quick fix for them. And it pretty much isn't. They've got a lot of questions. They've got to work a lot of things out. It's not a pill that they can take. It takes a long time.
And look, a lot of guys aren't looking for anything deeper, and I understand it. I get where you're coming from. But, you look back in the day, the guys it was a philosophy. What is a philosophy? They're looking to understand the world that they're living in, why you act that way from a behavioral perspective, from a psychological perspective, because they want understanding. You get that understanding. You understand the frame of things and how people work. It gives you a sense of comfort. Okay, this I can forgive. This I understand. I can now move on with my life. That's how I applied it. I took that knowledge and I applied it to everyday life. I can say, touching on the black pill again, like there was a guy called Monday FA, and I tried to get in touch with the guy at the beginning of the year because someone had recommended. I've got a few friends in everyday life that watch my stuff, so they know I put this content out, and they said, watch this guy. And he's the articulate guy and all the rest of it, and he was talking about his experiences. And a lot of it, some of his videos were like looks of disgust. This is how people react to me in a service environment. This is how women react to me, everyday people. And does this really happen? So I went out there and I started talking to guys in everyday life. I say, do you experience this? I said, yeah, okay. And I'd see them. They'd be at a bar or they'd be at a cafe, whatever. And I'd see how women would react to them. There'd be a look on their face. They not a look of disgust, but they wouldn't want to know the guy. It'd be a look of veiled hostility and all the rest of it. And I'm thinking, this is true. The guys are talking about it, saying, yes, I'm experiencing this. I think, okay, well, that took me by surprise, and I'd never known anything like that before. But I can see why guys sort of gravitate to the black pill, because it's delving into things, current issues that men are now facing. And it's touching on a lot of stuff and a guy looking at the content would go, okay, that resonates with me. I used to do videos that resonated with men because it was familiar to their experience. I was living this and other men were experiencing it. Likewise, when I watch Barbarossa or Stardust, the same thing. That speaks to me. So, yeah, I can understand that. But it seems like it's at a bit of a standstill, and there's a lot of charlatans that have come into the red pill. A lot of PUA. I don't know where the fuck PUA came from. It's not even PUA anymore. They've shut that down. Now it's life coaching. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I think it was kind of banned, so they sort of changed the business name, changed the business cards.
Yeah, I've been away a long time. So
a few of them have actually come into the corners of the Manosphere and MGTOW and things like that as well. You can tell by the way they talk. But yeah, and it's different times too. I agree in a lot of ways with Stardust, where it's a different time too. For instance, like even now when I film myself outside, people will say, oh, well, it's different with you, human. You go out and about and you travel. I go, I just grab a camera and go to the park, man. It's fuck. I'm not going across the world. Like I'm just like stepping outside and taking my camera with me, and like stepping into the world a little bit. And it's just a very different demographic. So, like you said, you'd speak to men that were having similar experiences in a pedestrian fashion out there in the world. So, yeah, there's just a very different audience now. But in terms of like the question was like, what subject do you feel has slipped through the cracks? For me, it's not that it's been talked about, so move on, because I think some of them do now. Like you mentioned, the black pill, they're just trying on something new. They're not really looking for the substance of the words or the ideas or what's needed. What might be needed to be talked about might be as old as the days. Like they're just stoic conversations. The conversations within the Manosphere are the same as back in the mythopoetic time of like Zeus, like men trying to work things out and find meaning. So I don't care if the same things are talked about, but from really authentic and real ways, like, mulled over and chewed over. Like, I don't care that you want to talk about women, but talk about it meaningfully.
Yes.
So for me, it's not the subjects. For me, it's a matter of that we're not thinking anymore. And the way I just ruminate about any stupid topic in my videos is what I want, what I hope guys start getting engaged with is the conversation, the introspection, and saying, hey, what about this? Have you ever thought that when you see this, maybe this is happening? Or maybe when this is happening and I feel this, have you ever thought that blah, 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 blah? Like really you're listening to yourself, the internal dialogue, you're noticing the world, you're reading between the lines. So it's not the topics, it's the thinking that I find is missing. Because back in the day when you guys, in the early MGTOW days of YouTube, it was more about the thinking, and from that thinking, these subjects came from that. So the topics that were groundbreaking and the elucidations of like, she'll never love you and all that stuff, that came from how we were thinking and how we are engaging. Now people are just, like you said, books of memes and cliches, and no one wants to think. People just want to discover quotes and snappy comebacks and gotchas and things like that. So they're not talking about anything in any substantive way. It's all spectacle and no internalization. It once resembled getting out of prison, like Shawshank. Now it resembles world wrestling on stage, posturing and shouting for effect. Yeah. Many just regurgitate the thinking of previous creators like you, like yourself and Stardust and so forth, and Baba, that contemplated and pulled rabbits out of their mental hats. But no one's doing the magic themselves anymore. That's the thing that's missing. People are literally mimicking the lines of you guys and Stardust and Baba and doing little else. They're just pantomiming what you guys said, word for word, annoyed at the world, and then seasoning their annoyance with Spetsnaz in their conversation. That's all they're doing. They're a witty, intelligent flourish. The amount of guys in the comment section, it's one line, women will never love you. It's like, great. You just gave me a line from somebody. Thanks for that. It's like asking more honest, contemplative questions is what I'd like to actually see. Not so much what hasn't been talked about, but how we don't talk or think anymore. We've intellectually given up on the hunger. Much of the Manosphere has been glib, pre-packaged, one-size-fits-all perfect answers like, ghost or just lock yourself away. And it is a very binary answer, but it's so life-killing. Go back to first principles, question, is this still true? Let me look at it from here again. Times change. Women are still the same, but where am I at the moment in life? And then when you do this, especially with females in the real world, it starts to pay off, which is where most men's frustration lies, in being you in the company of the female. And when you're honest in this way, you begin to say to yourself, hang on a minute, instead of my normal response to her, let me assess this honestly. And when you start to do that, I think that's a better path than glib memes and witty lines and just pilfering lines from Spetsnaz or Stardust and being made to think that, isn't he clever? Look at that witty line.
Yeah. I remember there was one guy, it was his last year, he's a big boy. He'd done some time and we're all at the pub. It was whatever it was. And we come there and he's at the bar. And there's this big guy behind the bar and he's got a bit of an attitude on him, the bartender. And the bartender, I can't remember what he said, but he yelled something at this guy. He was in the wrong job, obviously. He didn't have customer service skills. But the guy I knew that had just come out, he snaps at him. He says, blah, blah, blah. If you don't give me my fucking whiskey, I'll put your head through a fucking wall, you fucking dog, and all the rest of it. It was just going off. Blah, 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 blah. I go up to him and I just stand beside him and I smirk at him. He goes, fuck. Okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I should have thought. He didn't make that instant connection. He didn't make it. But that's what we'd always been working towards. I said 2 whiskeys. It's okay. I'll pay for it. But it's about making that connection. That's an extreme example, but it's about making those connections. And a lot of men aren't doing that. It's instinctive, and a lot of it's external, where they're not looking internally at and asking those more important questions.
And it's almost kind of like because the world's become so uncaring, cold, isolated, and so forth, people's defense is to be sort of defensively as bad, like go into survival mode. I think it was a Kingy MGTOW video a few months back or last year, where he was reviewing one of these many female dating coaches, which is just a laugh, like women online who are sort of relationship experts. Yeah. And they're giving dating advice to men. It's kind of like it's stupid. It's kind of like a 7-foot tall guy in the NBA giving a course on how to dunk. It's kind of like, it's easy for you, man. What are you giving advice for? Yeah. And she was sort of saying like, I'm here to give you the gems of what you need to do to have a relationship succeed. And his response was, just don't be an arsehole and rip people's hearts out. It's pretty much it. It's
pretty simple, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same with these human interactions. Just be a kind, decent person, man. And if you don't get it from the other person, oh well, see you later. I'm not going to be around you. If you're not going to converse, if you're going to talk all the time and I can't get a word in, or I'm always wrong, or whatever it might be, physically, emotionally, mentally, space, like if there's not that fairness, fuck off. Like don't be an arsehole.
Yeah. I don't have many expectations when I go out with a woman. It's if I like a company, it's good. But a lot of the women I go out with, I don't expect great conversation out of them. Go out, we'll catch a show, or we'll do whatever, just hang out, blah, blah, blah. But anything more than that, I have no need for it. I like the time that I spend with that person. I feel, a sense of closeness and intimacy with that person. I like being around them. I like their company. They're pleasurable to be around and all the rest of it. But I don't expect much more than that.
That's the hard thing, because we know that we're going to invest a lot of time with a potential mate. And you know that a large part of you need to sever in terms of, say, it's not just your freedom. Like a lot of guys say, I want to be on my own, I want to be free. I think at the heart of it is you just want to be able to express yourself the way you want to. Like I want to be able to engage in philosophical conversations if I'm talking to a person like this. Or if I can't, I'll be reading a book, or I'll be going for a run. I'll be engaged in parts of my life that are essential to me feeling alive and being fulfilled. But this other person that I'm potentially going to choose, if you have a real inclination that like, I can't lie to myself, a lot of that's going to go. It's like you really resist it, because if you can't lie to yourself, you can't lie that, you're not going to get a lot of intellectual depth from this person. The most you can hope for is common sense.
I've never expected that from a female.
Oh.
Well, I have poor choice, so maybe that's more of a reflection of me as an individual.
Look, I haven't either, but I have met women who have got a good head on their shoulders. They're less hypergamous, they're more rational, but it's basically just recognizing yourself, what you need as well. I think a lot of guys, they just want it all. Like, they want her to be everything, and if she's not, he'll make her that in his head, even if she's not. But it comes undone later on anyway, so you're better off recognizing it early.
Yeah. Any other questions then?
There was too many questions to go through all of them, and I think some of them you and I aren't interested in terms of just our general interests, like politics and world building and big topics like that. We're more personally interested in. What's the thing? I thought of it the other day. I thought, you know what? I'm objectively interested in the subjective. That's what I'm interested in, like the empirical, personal, relatable stuff between guys that we can talk about, and we recognize and go, hey, you know what? You're right. Like you've mentioned, like I thought I was alone, but it's common. Or I'm not a freak. This happens all the time. Everyday life is pretty important. So we didn't get around to all of them, but I think we touched on a lot of them, and some of them bled into the others. But it was really great that thanks to all the guys that wrote in.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to have a structure. And the questions were top notch. You got a good viewership base there.
Yeah, I'm grateful. On aggregate, a good bunch of guys in the comment section. So it's really good. Thanks for your time again, Spetsnaz. I had a ball as usual.
Yeah, no problem, man.
I better let you go. We'll do it again, and as usual, I'll put it together. I'm sure guys will love it. Thanks for your time, man.
Cool, man. See you later.
Bye.
Cheers.
If you appreciate my work, feel free to support me. Links on my channel. Thank you.